After teaching you all those techniques, I will leave Paul Walton, my mechanic, with you having a few words about suspension settings.
Hi, my name is Paul Walton and I'm the mechanic for the Mondraker factory team. I've been working with Fabian Burrell for 8 years and this is the 4th year as a mechanic for the team. I'm going to talk to you today about how to set up your suspension on your all-mountain bike. There's lots of different tips that I can give you to help you enjoy your ride more. Right, so the first thing we need to set up is the sag. Depending if you've got an air fork or a spring fork, you've got two different ways of doing that. Both of them will be done on the top here by this little knob. In this case it's an air fork, so by unscrewing this cap you've got an air valve underneath. On the other forks with a spring type, this little cap, by turning it, it preloads the spring. The sag you're wanting to look for is between 25 and 30%, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And what you do is you climb on the bike into your riding position, leaning against the wall is normally the easiest, and slightly push on the fork. You'll see that this little rubber ring will move up the fork. When you get off the bike, it will be left up, and if you measure the distance from that little rubber ring to the top of the seal, you'll get a measurement that you can then divide and get your percentage. Okay, so once you've got your sag set up, the next thing we need to do is sort out the hydraulic control. In the case of this fork, which is an all-mountain specific fork, we've got a low-speed compression adjuster. The low-speed compression adjuster will prevent the fork from diving under braking, and also in the case of the rear shock, it stops the bike from bobbing under pedaling. On this fork we've also got a lockout. The lockout you would use primarily on climbs or on really flat roads to prevent the bike from bobbing under pedaling. We've also got a lockout force adjuster. In this configuration you could use it for really steep descents. If you don't want the fork to dive too much, you could open up your lockout force adjustment and close the lockout. Also, we've got the rebound adjuster at the bottom. Now the rebound adjuster you want to set so that the fork doesn't spring back too much. Basically when you go into 3/4 of the travel, which you should be able to apply by just pushing on the fork really hard, if you let go at that point, you don't want the wheel to bounce up off the ground. At the same time, you don't want to be so slow that the wheel takes ages to react. Okay, so I think we're finished with the fork. Let's talk about the rear shock. The first thing to set is going to be the sag. On the sag, you've got a small ring, the same as what you had on the fork, which moves up and down, and that we're going to adjust with the air pressure on the shock. Some shocks you'll have a coil spring, in which case you need to adjust your sag by means of rotating the adjuster on the spring. Okay, so let's talk about the hydraulic of the rear shock. As with the fork, you've got a compression setting and a rebound setting. In this case, we've got a pro pedal lever, which allows you to have a firmer shock for when you want to pedal, on the flats or on the climbs. Here we've also got 3 settings for that pro pedal lever. We've got number 1 being the easiest and number 3 being the firmest. For the rebound adjuster, what you want to do is set it as we did with the fork. Basically that means that when you go deep into the stroke of the rear shock, if you take all the pressure off the bike, you don't want the bike to spring up. At the same time, when you're riding along a flat or on a climb, you want to have enough rebound damping so that the bike doesn't bob.
There you go, guys. I hope you guys learned some good tips. We definitely had good laughs doing this DVD. I probably